Welcome back. Welcome in. This is Country Roads Confidential at earsports.com. It's a Paramount podcast. It is an emergency episode. I'm back in the office in my basement. I've been here for several days, Chris. I know Sunday I was in the living room because Wi-Fi problems. I haven't left, and I don't anticipate leaving for a while because, stop me if you've heard this, West Virginia men's basketball needs a coach. Third coaching search in 3 off seasons. This time it counts, Chris. Um, where did we begin? Did we see
I don't
this
know.
coming?
You, yeah. I mean, this is something, was it Friday? I think you first mentioned it. I don't know when you first mentioned it on the board, or to our subscribers, but you certainly mentioned it before anybody else. And this was some intel that you kind of pointed out, like, hey, I know everybody's focused on Iowa, but Indiana, keep an eye out. Hearing Indiana and DeVries. And then it became pretty clear, that when it was not Iowa, like everybody kind of got on board again. You reported it, and then other people started getting on board nationally of, hey, Iowa, like DeVries told them no, like forget about it. We're not, don't even bother with an interview. Don't stop wasting your time. And that may seem like good news for WVU, but rather it was an indication that he had already made up his mind that if he was leaving WVU, it was for Indiana. No. So certainly the tea leaves were starting to fall into place. It started to make sense. And yeah, I mean, here we are again.
All right, so let's timeline this, Chris. 10:45 a.m. Friday. I almost said the person's name. Blank called DeVries to Indiana, says it's done. To which you said, "Holy hell!"
Yeah,
um,
that sounds right.
like right now before the tournament, but
For the
but
tournament, back when we were young and starry eyed, thinking they were
so
going to the postseason.
so let's start there. They had to know. They did not have their open to the public, open to the media selection show. They turned down all their postseason invites. Um, Today's Tuesday, Chris. A job like Indiana does not do business in 48 hours. And this is a guy who interviewed with West Virginia last year before his first round tournament game against Washington State. You have to have a pretty good um, uh, distortion of reality to think this just happened. I would say sometime between um, losing on Wednesday in the Big 12 tournament and probably Selection Sunday, there was a conversation and some forward movement to this end. Um, I don't know who's going to get mad at me about that because I don't have to deal with him anymore. But like that would be my guess there. We're not going to get a lot of color. We're going to have to do a lot of the reading between the lines from statements, whatever interviews we get. I'm sure we'll get some sort of a news conference with Ren Baker in the not too distant future. I don't know how much detail he'll go into. We can pick apart his statement here, but this does seem like it happened somewhat off the book, behind the scenes, whatever, which I'm not sure is abnormal for coaches in 2025 or 2015 or 2007 for that matter. We've been through this before. We've seen this across generations. This is the way it happens. This just seemed like it was something that there was something there. Now everybody was stuck on Indiana, and I think that's maybe, excuse me, on Iowa, and I think that's how pretty much this went off the radar of so many people because he was such a connection there. We never ever had it leaning toward him going to Iowa. Everything that we reported from the start was that West Virginia felt really good that it could beat Indiana when it came to salary, to NIL, to resources, to
Iowa, beat
facilities.
Iowa.
Excuse me, Iowa. Yeah, keep that one on the top of my head. That's how Indiana focused I've been. Anyways, they thought they could beat Iowa in all those matters, but it wasn't home. Fine. I'm not sure home really mattered to the extent, Chris, that he said that he was not going to talk to Iowa. That was our big news yesterday. And that's when you really start to connect the dots. If he's not talking to Iowa, which is his air quotes here for the audio crowd, dream job, that's a homecoming for him. If he has conveyed to his agent and he and his agent have confirmed with Rand Baker, with Iowa, with whatever search mechanism that is helping Iowa here, that they're not going to do the interview, and West Virginia has nothing on the schedule, huge red flag. You combine that with no postseason. Um, again, I got like a slap on the wrist from somebody about saying, "Oh, it's about the players." A day later, the coach is gone, right? And it seemed like it was happening that way. This just seems like it was on the track for me in my head, not for me, but like just for a while now. And once it became clear that he wasn't going to entertain an offer from Iowa, again, that was our reporting yesterday, which people dismissed offhandedly. And everything that we say, we weaved in. This does not mean he's off the market. Indiana is a real threat. That's been the consistent phrase we've used from the very beginning on this, which is not to brag, but to say that this has been something that's been cooking for a while. And I think that West Virginia knew, but knew late in the game, but also from the very beginning, knew that Indiana was going to be a possibility. The search firm that West Virginia used last year for DeVries, used previously for Rem Baker, is the same one Indiana's using. It knows Rem Baker, it knows Darian DeVries. Those connections are not difficult to make. I believe that Indiana told West Virginia fairly early it was going to be interested in DeVries, and here we are. So the question now, Chris, is not necessarily how long has this been going on. What has West Virginia done to make use of this time? How quickly can it get something done here? Because there are going to be some candidates that will be coveted by others, again, namely Iowa here. And there's going to be pressure on the athletic director to get this done and to get this right. This is a bad day for basketball here. It's a huge step backwards for a program that has been taking steps backwards until it hired Darren DeVries and started racking up big wins. It can't go sideways. It can't go one step forward. It needs to do something quickly here and emphatic. It's got to be a win.
Yes, it does. And I'm curious because again, we're talking about a timeline here. And if you're texting me, if you are texting me on a Friday, because you've already Friday morning, you've already heard it previously to tell me, that means it happened before Friday, or at least something serious happened before Friday. Things got very serious before Friday, which you've already noted here. But if West Virginia's known since then, my question is over the last, what is that, 4 days? Have they spent those 4 days getting a leg up on the next head coaching search? Or, as Ren Baker's statement might indicate, spent the last 4 days desperately trying to keep Darren DeVries in Morgantown? Um,
I think there's a resignation in this that they were not going to be able to outbid Iowa. I'd be really curious to see what the financials
Indiana.
are. God, should we start over, Chris? I mean, if you only got to be on the job for 1 year, if we do 10 minutes in a podcast, we can start over, right?
Yeah.
If he's making like 5.5 at Indiana, and I've seen some obscene numbers like 7, no way. If it's like 5.5, 6 million, that's that's too rich for West Virginia's taste. If it's 4.5, that means he didn't want to be here and that he just took a minimal offer to get to a Big Ten job that has, listen, prestige. It's a prestige program. But I would just think that he did not want to be here for this. There's a lot of questions that again should be asked, could be asked, won't be answered. Was there unrest with NIL? Um, I've heard that's not necessarily the case. What happened to his son's shoulder? Why did he shut down the year and preserve another season that can now be spent in the Big Ten at a prestige program? There are a lot of questions there that just make you wonder, um, Chris, what did the president know and when did he know it? One of those things.
Let's talk about that statement for a second, Mike.
Wild,
I
right?
mean, yeah, lengthy, already on a graphic and ready to go. Obviously, they knew again beforehand. They knew before what was about 6 o'clock when Indiana officially announced him as the new head coach there. But the first half of it, talking about it. Well, first off, speaking of timeline, I might have skipped this over actually when we did a little prep talk before we hopped on here. Um, quote here from Ren Baker. Coach and I had several conversations in recent weeks focused on working together. Is that am I reading too much into recent weeks that
That's
this
the
is this?
contract extension we talked about, Chris. That's something else
Yes.
we've reported that there has been an agreement on a contract extension. And again, specs, I don't know how specific it was, but years, money, what it looks like, how does NIL work? I don't think NIL would have been in the contract, but um, and it's just the nature of coaches. Like, hey, can we get this at the end of the season? Season ended Sunday, Chris. And if he wanted to be here, he would have picked it up and done it. And maybe they did, to be fair to him and to Baker. Maybe he did. but the offer from Indiana is just better. If the offer from Indiana is serious money, like, again, like 5 million, 5.5 million, that's huge. If it's $4.2 million, then you really got an indication that he was not interested in continuing here. Why? Don't know. Did pretty good this year. Seemed pretty happy. He's in a major conference, and no real attachments to Indiana, unless like he's like, yeah, man, I really want to make Corey Barnett's homecoming happen. This assistant coach I just met and just worked with the first time this year. I'd like to get him back home to Indiana. No, there's something there. Sure, there'll be a lot of interesting questions and reporting done, maybe in the shadows here, but um, this just isn't something that West Virginia can let go. They should not let this go. If there was something untoward happening right now, it can't be well, we're just not a big time program. You can't fancy yourself a top 15, top 20 program and just throw your hands up when an Indiana comes calling, because guess what? That attitude is going to get more coaches in other sports plucked, or more coaches in basketball plucked. You have to fight that on the ground or above your head sometimes.
Of note, I don't know how relevant it's going to be, but Mike Woodson's salary, $4.2 million when he was at Indiana. So again, presumably DeVries will be paid more than that, but just throwing that number out there for everybody.
And
Let's talk
that's the
about
number
that with West. Huh?
number I kind of heard here. Again, hadn't heard stuff, but like upwards of 4 million. Like they were willing to go to the Huggins level, which I think is 4.2, right? And like that they've had that in their budget for how many years? They can hit that because they're used to that. They'll have more income because of that, right? So go for that. You could probably go above that too. But if that number in Indiana is similar, um, I'm pretty confident that West Virginia fought and tried to do it. But unless this guy's just obsessed with NIL, which again, that's your key, and maybe he's not an income guy and just wants to work at a prestige program. We'll see.
Um, let's talk about that with West Virginia and where they sit kind of in the totem pole because this is something that we discussed the last time this job was opening. And I think I brought up a conversation. God, I'm trying to remember. I remember it vividly because I was sitting at a camp at West Virginia, standing on the hill next to the practice field, doing the radio interview, and they were talking about where West Virginia's men's basketball program ranks as far as a job with the rest of the country. And I think it was a guy out of Maryland that had taken offense to a comment that I had made about West Virginia's being a top 25, maybe even a top 10 type of head coaching job. And my argument was at the time, Huggins was being paid as a top 10 coach, salary wise. He was paid as a top 10 coach at West Virginia University in the entire country. The facilities, second, the Big 12 was at the time the marquee conference in all of college basketball. Not really the case anymore. Still up there, but not the top. And the facilities, I believe the stories we were hearing at the time were other programs were coming to West Virginia to see what West Virginia had done at their practice facilities so they could copy them at their own facilities. Again, that indicates to me that that's pretty high up there on the chain for college basketball. So those are the three things I was looking at and saying, hey, West Virginia is a top 25, maybe top 10 spot if you're a head coach. Where is it now? I mean, because it's not the most prestigious anymore. That 4.2 million is still healthy, but not top 10. And the practice facilities, while still great, every year you get removed from when they first start is one year they become more dated than when they were first put up. So
Yeah, but like, what are you doing with practice facilities? Like, are they going to levitate? Do we have hoverboard practice facilities? Like, you need multiple courts and rims and backboards. Got it. They have all the rehab and training equipment you got. Like, I don't think that needs a fresh coat of paint anytime soon. And like, realistically, what more can you do with a practice facility? Are you going to have like a standby NBA team there just so you can practice against them? Like, that would be cool. Are we doing AI? Like, you're getting like robots to do your practice, maybe, I guess. I don't know. So like I just don't know, that's not bad. I get that. Their facility needs something of an overhaul with their seating. It needs to generate more income from them. It has to do something to stimulate attendance. That's a fact. Like those are things they're working on too. So that's fine. But this just comes to money, Chris. And if you're not in the SEC or Big Ten right now, you really have to work and overextend maybe to be in that conversation or to stay in that conversation just because the economics are such a big deal now. And that's perhaps why it's important that West Virginia does seem to be aligning its NIL in-house. You can pour your money from your athletic department in there too. But I think you would probably find out West Virginia's goal for NIL in 25, 26 was like in that 3.5 million range. Not a huge number, even for only 15 people. But like when you're talking about a freshman point guard who wants like in excess, excuse me, a freshman shooting guard who wants like in excess of $500,000 to stay in your team, it's a huge chunk of your money, and he's not your best player. So
We talking about somebody specific there, Mike?
no, hypothetically, and that's probably lowballing it too. So just imagine you got to do that to keep a guy who's okay on your team, and you're banking on the potential of the future there. But like, what's to say he's not going to go in the portal again next year, and then after his junior year, and what's to say he's going to stay? Like that's why the income is such a big deal, and it's so hard. And I just think administrators and ADs just are pulling their hair out on this, going just when you think you have every hole plugged, all of a sudden your feet are wet and you realize you're taking on water from a different direction. You got to stop and figure out what the problem is, how to solve it, and hope another wasn't doesn't pop up. Which is to say, this like, man, Ren Baker, like just going through some things here, and like this is he's got a women's basketball coach who's going to be very popular once her season, excuse me, his season's over for their team. Um, the similar metrics apply there. Like, what does the women's program have? And that is not a top 15, top 20 program in the nation, right? What if one of those calls, like, and what if it's one in Texas or something like that? Like, these are just constant worries in every sport. It goes to different sports, and just how our team's gonna pluck your assets, and that's certainly a problem here, whether it's players or coaches. So
All right,
yeah,
I got two.
long
Sorry.
answer, long answer, yeah, like if it's that top 20 program now, it's on the cusp of, and it's certainly in danger of being like top 30 program, which is still a good place to be, but it's not what they worked a long time to establish and sustain, and it's getting away from them right now.
All right, two impossible questions for you to answer before we wrap up here. Last year, this year's roster had one single returning player, scholarship player from the previous season. Over under 1.5 returning players for next season.
Under.
Under.
This is a total redo because you're gonna have a whole new staff. Just again, this is unfair to them, and I apologize because I'm sure Sincere Harris and Amani Hansberry are watching on YouTube right now, right? That's what they're doing. They're in a light bed just checking out this podcast because got to know what you and I think, right? But
Yep.
they're not here to play for West Virginia. They're not. They followed an assistant coach from Illinois to here. I'm not saying that they're going to end up at like Coppin State or someplace that Chester Frazier may end up that's not on the level of West Virginia. But if he's going to go to a good school, you probably have to think they're going to follow him. The rest of these players are like mercenaries who just want the money. I mean, that's, and again, is that fair to everybody? No, but prove it otherwise. Prove that this stigma, this stereotype is wrong, which means stick around for a coach who didn't recruit you, doesn't know you, may not play your style of offense or defense, and you have no idea if he can develop you as a player so you can actually make the money that you might otherwise get from the portal. Why would you stay? Why? That's hard, but that's true.
All right. Next question. Final question. Who's the next head coach, Mike? You
Hot
just want to
board's
skip
out,
past the
Chris.
hot board? Hot board's at it?
Hot board's out. It's got 10 names on it. At best, 9 are going to be wrong. I will update this as I hear from more. I will just be frank with you. Like there are people that I talk to that will give me names on this, I hope in the future, who are like, you're off your rocker on this. It's Iowa or he's staying. I'm like, I believe you're wrong. And I'm getting messages right now just like, wow, you had it again. I can't believe this. By the way, I hate you. Oh, Jesus, that's hard. Um, and like
God, wait, why is Ren texting you during the podcast? That's very awkward.
by the way, I hate you. Man, that's a cut. I'm not sure I'm gonna respond to that one, but I think you're gonna have more information here. Like so some of these names are names that you know they were interested in last year. Um, and some of them may be obtainable. Like Josh Schertz is on my hot board right now. Is he gonna leave St. Louis right now for West Virginia? St. Louis is a very good mid-major job. Is West Virginia the bounce for him? I don't know. We'll see. Chris Mack, another guy. I don't think it's a reach to say he's going to leave College of Charleston for West Virginia. I think you could rationalize that. Trouble is, like a lot of the coaches I liked last year, Chris, are at new jobs. Ben McCollum's at Drake. Pat Kelsey is at Louisville. We mentioned Shirts. We mentioned Mac. There's other guys too. This begins, Chris, with Ben McCollum. It just
All right,
does.
did you forget Mark Byington? Sorry.
This just
Go on.
begins and ends with McCollum for me, and this is why I think it's a big deal for Baker too. I don't know how it lands on Rich Rodriguez, but I'm not sure that was the preference. But that became a very easy decision to make once the support existed for him, and you could see all the spending they've done and the excitement and enthusiasm they've had. That's important for football. It's going to be important for basketball too. If McCollum picks Iowa, that does not look good for West Virginia if you spent this whole time saying you have a better job than Iowa. And if Rem Baker cannot get the guy that he's known for a long time, and I gotta think stays in touch with and communicates with and says, hey, we might have an opening here in 24 hours. If he goes for Iowa, um, I think your supporters for guys like Jerry Calhoun are going to come out of the woodwork and say, let's make this happen. We can give you money. He'll come for $2 million. Use the extra money on NIL because it's going to be in-house, right, Chris? Those are two I think are going to be at the top of the TikTok here. How this goes quickly, I don't know. We'll see. They're both playing. Calhoun's in Lexington. There will be delegates of West Virginia at that game. I promise you that. McCollum, we'll see what happens there. He's got a chance to advance. I think a lot of people think. And then from there, Chris, I think you're going to look at people differently than you would have last time. For example, Bucky McMillan is at Samford. Bucky ball. Really exciting. Pressing on offense, excuse me, on defense, playing fast, shooting threes on defense. But he's only been a college coach and only a college head coach for 5 years. That would have been disqualifying last year. The success of McCollum and the way that you can win right away and you need to be exciting, that might elevate a guy like him this year. And there are other coaches on that list that I think you can make arguments for that maybe you wouldn't have last year. There are other coaches on that list that you're like, all right, if this is someone they can hold on to for a long time, someone who is serious about committing 5 or 6 years to a Power Four program, this one fits. So there's a bit of a different flavor on almost every name right there. Some are going to overlap a little bit, some are not, but it's not one profile of a candidate because Chris, that profile did not work this time. It didn't. So can you plug the same one in here? Are you going to be doing this again next year? No, you got to think a little bit differently. So I think you're looking at a non-power four head coach who's won consistently and have postseason appearances where he's at, but has probably done it in multiple places. And I think that does something that's a little bit different. That's DeVries, longtime assistant, winning at Creighton. He wasn't the head coach there. Very successful at Drake, a good offense and a very good defense. I think you can plug that in, but I don't think you're going to have a stigma of this guy's too West Virginia or a Bob Huggins guy. I don't think that counts anymore. I don't think you have to say this guy has to have been a head coach for X number of years. I'm not sure that he has to have NCAA tournament appearances because now if you can give the NIL and the salary and the support, it's going to make fringe candidates better. And you're going to have to be willing to accept some learning on the job because if you're West Virginia and you have somebody who wins in his first and second year, how can you not be worried about losing him right now? You got to let someone grow on the job.
Okay. Related. I lied. I did have one follow-up now. How does this 1 year done, let's not say backstabbing, but however you want to say this all went down, how does this change, let's say, the search for a new coach, which they seem to indicate might, they might target certain other guys. And how does it change the contract? Like, is it 100% buyout now? Like, if you want to leave, it is 80% of your buyout to get out of here.
I think I think you can't do the same thing and expect something different, right? That's your definition of insanity. But I don't think you can go overboard because then you scare people away. Because then you're like, you know what? It actually is a West Virginia thing with this. That's not going to be inviting to the coach that leaves because that's half of the 75% that West Virginia owes a coach that fires. That's a weird metric. I think you got to be different, and then you can't be the same and hope for something the same. I think this is your answer there. It'll be really curious to see how much different they go. It may depend on the candidate. It may depend on the age of the candidate, or someone who's been at the group of power. But if it's somebody who's been a major coach, his early 40s or whatever, I'd make it that would be your concern. He's going to jump up here to a power four job that isn't a high power four job, perhaps, and have his eyes on somewhere else. You would seek to discourage that if you could.
I'm like, well, let's get this up because you got to get back to work. You got to get to hotboard version. Have you figured out how to do the versions correctly this time? You remember how mad this made a couple of our users last time? Is it 1.1 or 2.0?
Damn, it made
Can you
me
figure
mad.
that out?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go to the webinar about how to do a hot board because I don't have any experience in this. I need the
Yep.
knuckleheads to tell me how to do it, right?
Yep.
Listen, that's gonna get updated. I promise you. We'll hear some things. People say, get that guy off of there, get this guy in there. It'll happen. But the point of the starting point now is that it's an array of profiles and possibilities, right? But I think you're gonna
Yep.
find somebody that fits.
Well, that's the best part of that version 1.0. You put it out, and then that prompts the responses of, whoa, whoa, hold on. Let me step in here. And nope, not
Hey,
that.
real quick.
Maybe that.
I
Yep.
fully expect to go click on this and see this, but I do not have Will Wade on there. Should he be on there?
Don't know. Interesting. I think I told you right before we got on here. I got a message from someone in North Carolina being like, hey, West Virginia, Will Wade? Question mark. And this was, I think that was Saturday, Sunday. It was over the weekend before West Virginia found out they were not in the tournament, before Darian DeVries was officially out. Um, I don't know what that means. I don't know why that was asked, but is the show cause over? Is that right? I mean, I haven't been keeping tabs on him since he was removed fairly early last year.
Yeah, I heard pretty quickly last year they were not going to entertain that. He did have a show cause, and then I told this to people last year, and they didn't believe me. But like the word was, he was going to stick it out for another year and let the show cause expire at McNeese State. I believe it expires. It could be like a June 30, July 1 thing, but I believe it expires over the summer. He would not be able to do some recruiting. It's valuable, but you could still get stuff done. And uh, that's a we're serious about basketball move, Chris,
Yeah.
which may be what the doctor ordered here.
All right then. It's different. You said no different. That's different. There you
We'll
go.
see. We will see. Again, you can't do the same and expect for a better result here. So, listen, good coach, good season. But man, just like everything else right now, it's year by year. Darren DeVries done 19 wins, some highlights, some lowlights, a lot of momentum. Ultimately, a whiff by saying you're a lock at the end of the season for the tournament, and now Bloomington, Indiana. So, who had that in their bingo card, right? A week
Yeah.
ago. Let's see. Until then, I'm Mike Kazaza.
And I'm Chris Anderson.
We will talk to you then.